Welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles, and I am your host here in the Rio Grande Valley, Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas, to be exact. Got a packed show for you today. We're going to be talking to our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, a little bit later in the program to talk about some of the issues surrounding cattle and beef when it comes to importing, exporting, as well as some of the damage that could be on the verge of happening to our cattle stock here in the United States. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. We're also going to hear from our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, who has some new information from Mexico City as the Mexican president responds to the Department of Transportation canceling several flights into and out of Mexico heading to and from the United States. So we'll talk about that in just a few moments. But as always, let's go ahead and start by taking a look at what's happening across the border, starting with the Trump administration limiting the number of refugees admitted annually to the United States to 7,500, and they'll mostly be white South Africans. It's a huge drop after the U.S. previously allowed in hundreds of thousands of people fleeing war and prosecution from around the world. The administration published the news in a notice on the Federal Register on Thursday. There was no reason given for the significant drop in numbers, which are a dramatic decrease from last year's ceiling of 125,000 set under the Biden administration. The memo stated that the admission of the 7,500 refugees during the 2026 budget year is, quote, justified by humanitarian concerns or is otherwise in the national interest. Also trending across the border, Illinois advocates have sued federal authorities over alleged inhumane conditions at a Chicago area federal immigration facility. The lawsuit filed earlier today alleges that immigrants at the Broadview facility on the west side of Chicago are being denied their right to an attorney and also being subjected to those quote-unquote inhumane conditions. Attorneys say federal agents have denied detainees food, water, hygiene, and medical care. The attorneys further say people have been coerced into signing paperwork they don't understand. Local advocates have for weeks been raising concerns about conditions at the facility where tense protests have taken place. The Associated Press says neither ICE nor Homeland Security responded to emails seeking comment on those lawsuits earlier today. Also happening earlier this week, the Trump administration revoked approval for 13 Mexican airline routes into the United States. Those airlines operate from Mexico City International Airport and the newer Felipe Angeles International Airport to the U.S. The revocation impacts Aeromexico, Volaris, and Viva Airlines. The move eliminates all combined passenger and cargo flights. These are known as belly cargo flights. The Transportation Department said Mexico breached an aviation agreement starting in 2022 when it rescinded U.S. passenger carrier slots and forced U.S. all-cargo carriers to relocate operations. In Texas, that move impacts airports in San Antonio, Dallas, Austin, and right here in South Texas, specifically the McAllen International Airport. McAllen city leaders did tell Border Report Live they are working with congressional leaders to try to protect the direct air route to Mexico. And it's time now to bring in our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, because, Julian, you've got some new reporting today on the reaction from the Mexican president and Mexico in general regarding this revocation of flights to and from those airports. What can you tell us?
That's right, Rudy. Right now, you mentioned 2022, and this is something that originated 2 or 3 years ago when the then president of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, decided to relocate several airlines to his new signature airport about 45 minutes away from downtown Mexico City. So several American airline carriers got displaced, starting with cargo planes, but also planes that carry passengers. So that controversy has been brewing for a couple of years, and now the end result is that the U.S. Apparently has taken measures against the Mexican carriers that you mentioned. The latest on this is that the president of Mexico, all of this week, has been on national television trying to make the case that, first of all, the American airlines were relocated for safety reasons. She says that the original Mexico City airport, which is called Benito Juarez, was oversaturated, overcrowded, and that it was becoming a danger for planes taking off and landing, and could pose a threat to passengers. So that's why some airlines were moved over there. Now, she's saying that she doesn't really understand where this American reaction is coming from. And she is a little concerned that this might give competitive advantage to American carriers that operate in Mexico. We have some sound from her, if we can play it.
Habría una saturación. Pero además no creemos que se haya afectado.
There would be saturation, plus we don't believe the competitiveness of U.S. airlines has been affected. We don't believe that. There was an accord to distribute the number of flights from various airlines to the airport. We don't want any airline to be favored over another, but we don't want to jeopardize the safety or users. Also, cargo operators invested on the airport. We hope this doesn't have a political motivation or is meant to favor American businesses inside Mexico, but we are confident we will reach an agreement.
En riesgo a los usuarios. Y que además inversiones que ya.
So there you go, Rudy. Mexico believes that this could have a political motivation, that is maybe to strike back for what Mexico did a couple of years ago to the American carriers, and she's concerned. Now, the impact, she says that the impact is primarily going to be felt in new routes that were supposed to start flying from Mexico to the U.S. and vice versa in November. She says that some routes that are presently operating will not be affected or have not been affected. Maybe Sandra can shed some light on that.
Yeah, sure. Let me bring in our South Texas correspondent now, Sandra Sanchez, to discuss this a little further. Sandra?
Hi, Rudy. Great to be here with you and Julian. Yeah, we are understanding that flights are being impacted from McAllen. McAllen is a big hub that works to, get direct flights to Mexico. We actually just received a statement, this is kind of breaking, from Secretary Duffy from the city manager in McAllen. And he says, this just came in right now, right to you today, with our deep concern regarding the Department of Transportation's recent actions affecting international air routes operated by Mexican carriers, particularly the proposed cancellation of Aeromexico's service to and from McAllen International Airport. So, he says, we urge these efforts to be targeted toward markets where competition exists or is anticipated. In the case of McAllen, no U.S. carrier currently competes or has expressed interest in competing with Aeromexico's routes from MFE, that's the airport here. The proposed cancellation would not advance competitive equity, but rather diminish essential connectivity for our region. So, this proposal could have significant implications as people were planning their holiday travels to this new airport from McAllen. Many people, McAllen markets itself as a wonderful way to travel to Mexico. It's just a hop. Some people will cross the border and fly out of Reynosa, but that is a level 3, level 4 State Department do not travel city. So McAllen is much safer, but they were planning on going to the new airport, and this has put an all stop on that right now. According to this letter, they're really saying that $1.2 billion in total economic output for 2024 is how much this McAllen International Airport impacts the local regional economy, and almost 9,000 jobs, and they're worried some of that will be chipped away by this stop.
Yeah, and you mentioned, the city of McAllen, along with all the other public airports here in the Rio Grande Valley. It's kind of a point of pride to start offering these flights. And I know Brownsville South Padre Island Airport, which is about 30 minutes to our south. And then we've got the Harlingen Airport that's right here in just about 10 minutes away from us here at KVEO in Harlingen, Texas. All three of these airports are in a constant, I won't say battle amongst each other, but they're all constantly looking for new airlines coming in to support their airport operations in a way. So it's a little concerning coming from someone who's worked in the aviation field myself, to see that a lot of a lot of what there is kind of their crown jewel could come into play going forward. A lot of these airports also depend, as you said, I mean, so many jobs, the economic impact of having those international flights, and, it kind of throws everything up in the air for them. So I wanted to bring Julian back in you had something to add?
Yeah, I have something to add to the conversation, Rudy. I just wanted to let you know that some of my peers here in El Paso at KTSM were looking into flights to Mexico over the holidays. And they tell me that they have been told by the Mexican Airlines to consider alternate plans because of this. They're expecting it to hit them hard during the holidays.
So they're actually, you have actual airlines from the other side of the border actually telling folks, hey, maybe not this time around then. So very interesting stuff.
And it's really interesting that Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum cited safety and security reasons for kind of triggering this whole episode. So I guess we'll wait and see exactly how that plays out, what she's referring to.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really expected this, the continuing feud, if you will, between the United States and Mexico to move on into the air travel sector, but yet here we are today. All right, well, we'll stay with us because when we come back, Sandra is going to join us once again to talk about the cattle industry and the impacts that tariffs and much, much more are having and how it could affect the food that you put on your table. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. And welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. I wanted to bring in our South Texas correspondent once again, Sandra Sanchez, to discuss the ongoing cattle problems. We're going to talk about the screwworm in just a little bit because we've got continuing coverage on that, and you're doing an incredible job of staying on top of that. But I wanted to start with something that's been kind of on the forefront of a lot of, especially ranchers' minds over the last couple of weeks, and that is the I don't even know how you would call this, but basically the push for Americans to buy Argentinian beef.
We're talking a lot today of trade. That's really the basis of our show today is trade. And what we have is new information. I received a letter. 14 Republican lawmakers, House representatives, including one Texas Congresswoman, sent a letter to Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins earlier this week saying, why are we allowing Argentina to quadruple the amount of beef that it is exporting to the United States that we are importing in? So right now, the Argentina sends $200 million worth of beef to the United States, and we only send them $2 million. And they're saying it's not fair. They also, interestingly, cite some health concerns, saying that there is foot and mouth disease in Argentinian cattle, and they are concerned that it could come to the United States. I'm going to read you a little bit from this letter that we got, and we've put it on borderreport.com, but it says, quote, while we share the administration's goal of lowering costs for consumers, we are concerned that granting additional market access to Argentina, already one of our largest beef suppliers, will undermine American cattle producers, weaken our position in ongoing trade negotiations, and reintroduce avoidable animal health risks. They go on to question the, quote, long-term fairness of this trade deal. And basically they are asking, now keep in mind, these are Republicans criticizing what the Trump administration is doing. They want more investments into U.S. processing capacity for helping small and medium cattle ranchers. They want to lower the costs for them and increase access to grazing lands, they say, rather than helping foreign competitors. Interestingly, I asked the Texas and Southwestern Cattle Ranchers Association, which is a very conservative organization, how they felt about it. And they wrote back to me, quote, we aren't doing any interviews on that subject, unfortunately. But I did speak to this week with Democratic Congressman Henry Cuellar. He's on the House Appropriations Committee. He says tariffs on feed and fertilizer are contributing to higher cost of U.S. beef, which is up 50% from 2020. And he says that this trade deal with Argentina is, quote, a sweetheart deal. Here, I think we have a little bit what he told us.
So it's a double whammy, 40 billion bailout to Argentina, which is, depends a lot on cattle. They're increasing the amount of import Argentinian meat into the U.S. while our cattle people are hurting. You talk to anybody that's in the cattle industry, they're angry. They're not happy. They're not happy.
At the beginning of that, Rudy, he was referring to $40 billion in an economic bailout that Argentina, that the United States has just approved to send to Argentina. So they're saying $200 million worth of meat Argentina's sending us. They're getting $40 billion in economic relief, and we're just getting $2 million worth of our beef products sent there. And as I mentioned, meat costs are up 50% on average since 2020, which for people who eat meat, I'm not one, is a big deal.
Yeah, no, and you see that price being reflected. I've been seeing social media posts of people from all across the country saying, ground beef was my go-to cheap meal prep for the week, and now it's just as much as buying a couple fillets. So you're definitely seeing the impact, at least from folks on on social media. I wanted to bring Julian into this. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the beef that we could also be getting from Mexico. What is Mexico talking about when it comes to the prolonged ban on Mexican beef imports, or exports rather?
Really, first of all, let me jump into the previous conversation. As you know, I monitor the news media south of the border, not just Mexico, but countries in South America. What I can tell you is that Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, is a staunch supporter of President Trump. They have a really good relationship. That may explain why they're trying to help each other in this case. Now, let me tell you that Argentina exports only 1/6 of the amount of beef that other countries like Brazil, and the president of Brazil, Mr. Lula, is not a Trump ally, export to the U.S. So obviously, again, we see political ramifications in something that hits our pocketbook, and in this case, our dinner table. Now, going back to what you asked me, what's going on in Mexico is that obviously with the concerns over the screwworm contamination, Mexican beef is not getting to America. And that is having a multi-million-dollar effect on Mexican producers, ranchers, exporters, as well as obviously American consumers who have to pay more for meat now that Mexican meat is not coming to the U.S. There have been some developments this week in Mexico as far as when they believe this impasse between the two countries is going to be solved. They are talking about the $51 million sterile screwworm fly production facility that is being built in southern Mexico. The Mexican Agriculture Secretary, Mr. Julio Verdaguer, went on national television this week, and he said that facility is making great progress, that they're about 30% complete. And he expects this facility to be operational sometime early next year. Now, he also mentioned that in order for this problem not to surface again, as you know, exports of beef, livestock exports from Mexico resumed briefly this summer, and then they were halted again. So he says that in order for this to become a permanent solution, that plant must be 100% operational. And also, Mexico is looking into developing some mobile sterile fly production facilities. This is straight out of science fiction, but it's actually fact. This facilities in theory would work, and that is to have smaller laboratories that can relocate to places where screwworm contamination has been detected, and the flies could be released locally. Right now, the plant that is under construction is in southern Mexico. It's not mobile, and Mexico hopes to stop the screwworm spread there in southern Mexico. But in case it goes to other places, and we already had cases in Veracruz, in the Gulf Coast, as well as in Nuevo León, very close to the border. So those mobile facilities in the future maybe a couple of years from now, would add additional sterile flies that could control a localized outbreak.
And to kind of tie into both of these topics a little bit, I wanted to hear from we've got some sound from Senator John Cornyn from here in Texas on both Argentinian beef and what he thinks one of the biggest problems we have is
prioritizing foreign countries' products over American grown and manufactured products. In other words, I support the Texas cattle industry. It's an important part of our economy, and so I don't support allowing more Argentinian beef or beef from anywhere in the world to come in and flood the markets and drive down prices. Well, one of the biggest problems we have is not tariff related, it's the screwworm.
And there you have it. Sandra, I wanted to bring you back in for this next part of the conversation. We just heard Julian talking about what they're doing south of the border to combat screwworms. What do we got going on here now?
Yeah, actually, as you know, we have planes that have been flying out for several months from Moore Air Base in Edinburgh. Well, it's a rural area of Hidalgo County. Yesterday, I spoke with Republican Congresswoman Monica de la Cruz. That is her district. She says that 100 million sterilized flies are being flown from this air base right now into Mexico to try to address this situation. And once this facility is up and running in about 15 to 18 months, it should be able to produce the sterilized flies, because right now they're just moving the flies from that location. They will be able to hopefully have 300 million sterilized flies leaving from this location to address this situation. I know we mentioned this before, but I think it's worth re-mentioning. One of the interesting factors, one of the reasons the screwworm got so out of control was because of the coronavirus pandemic. And when that struck, the facility that was making the sterilized screwworm in Panama, basically the inspectors, they shut down. The workers couldn't go to it because of the pandemic. And so the flies, these flies started to multiply and get out of control, and it gradually moved from Panama north and it entered Mexico. Last November. So we're almost at 1 year since Mexico first detected it. As you know, it was 70 miles from Sabinas. Hidalgo was the closest to Zapata, which is South Texas. Mm-hmm. That's the closest that we've noticed that it's come. I spoke to two congressmen this week who both said that it is not gotten any closer as far as anyone knows. As you know, we do have a government shutdown. A lot of inspectors
and that was going to be my question.
Working.
Yeah, how's the shutdown impacting all the work that they've been doing behind the scenes for the last year?
Yeah. So, I've been told that, they're still staying on top of this. And Congresswoman de la Cruz actually yesterday spoke with Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins and asked about a number of issues affecting South Texas and trade involving the screwworms, as well as the water situation down here. And I know we're going to talk about that after we come back from the break.
Yeah, and we're going to take that quick break right now. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. And welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. So if you're new to the program, you may be surprised, but if you're not, then you are not surprised for sure. But Mexico has once again missed its deadline to pay the United States the water it owes us. And Sandra has been on top of this for a very long time now. What can you tell us?
Yeah, the deadline was Saturday, and they missed it. They paid just about half, actually less than half of the amount. They're supposed to pay 1.75 million acre feet of water to us during a 5-year cycle, which just ended. This is under a 1944 international treaty that both countries agreed upon. In return, so they're supposed to send that water to us via the Rio Grande. We store it in 2 reservoirs here, Amistad and Falcon. And in return, we are to pay every year 1.5 million acre feet of water via our Colorado River to Mexico. Now, we always make our payments. We did hold back a little water earlier this year. President Trump was sending a message to Mexico, but it was a very small amount. But I spoke to 3 congressional representatives from South Texas this week who are all furious that Mexico has once again missed the deadline, and they've consistently missed the deadline. Now, back in 2020, they were close. They got about 1.6 million acre feet in total they ended up paying. They were a little late, but they ended up paying. But, this time they paid like $867,000 out of $1.75 million. So that's about as much as enough to fill 500,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. That's how much water we're missing down here. And that's really hurting the we talked about it. The sugar industry is non-existent here. The citrus industry is extremely threatened, Congresswoman De La Cruz told me. And municipalities are conserving, residents are conserving. I mean,
yep, we have certain days we can water.
Everyone needs to look at long-term solutions.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for your reporting today, Sandra. We appreciate you being here. South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez. Thanks to our El Paso correspondent Julian Resendez. My name's Rudy Mideles. We'll see you next week.